Hello and welcome to another episode of SaaS Marketing Weekly with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. And today we have a very special guest, Jess Chilman, the head of growth at Rocket SaaS. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
And how are you feeling? You ready for the pod?
I'm ready for the pod. I've been asking to come on this pod for a while, so delighted to finally be here.
Nice. Well, I'm a little bit worse for wear. I'm back from a 3-day snag do, but the show must go on. We're not going to let a little hangover stop SaaS Marketing Weekly. But today we are talking about how to grow a personal brand on LinkedIn and how important that is for scaling your business.
We are indeed. So to kick off, a little bit of context why we're talking about this today. So I have about 10 years experience in SaaS and particularly in B2B tech. And I've worked in a lot of seed stage and Series A stage companies. So founder marketing has been in my little playbook for a while because it's a really great way to build trust in those early stages of business. And I also found out about Rocket SaaS through your personal brand. So I'm the end goal. I am the person that turned into a prospect and became an advocate. I referred a few business to you. And now I'm here as an employee on the show.
Yes, personal branding helps for not just lead gen, but also hiring.
Yeah.
It's important for that. Okay. So you're saying that you've been a marketer for multiple SaaS businesses and you've seen firsthand the power of the founder or senior people in the business growing a personal brand and what that can do.
I've been the puppet master in the background, orchestrating it and helping founders grow it. But yes, exactly. I've seen the power.
Nice. I heard something really interesting about AI and how it's obviously changing the world of business and everything that we do. And the way it was described was that because everyone's going to be using AI and it just means that lots of businesses are going to become very similar to one another. It's very difficult to differentiate yourselves because everyone's faceless, everyone's using the same automations, and therefore it's very hard to distinguish you against your competitors. However, what AI can't take away from you is your personal brand. It can't take away your personality, your story, the way you look, the way you just talk about yourself and the growth of the company. So that is a really powerful way to make you stand out from your competitors. So now is more important than ever to lean into your personal brands.
100%. I think basically with AI, there's so much content. So how do you tell a story worth telling? So I think in terms of when is right time to lean into your founder's brand, the short answer is it's based on your stage and also your story. So there was a stat from a recent LinkedIn survey that said 48% of SaaS buyers are highly influenced by executives in a company. So it's unsurprising that people are leaning more and more towards founder marketing because it's such a big influencer in terms of people's buying cycles. But there are certain times where it's not right for you. So there's 3 things to look out for. So the first one is your product resonating? So have you started to find product market fit? The second one is, have you found your niche? So do you know who your ideal customer profile is? So you can then target your messaging and tailor to those pain points for those users. And the third one is, have you got something to say? So people don't want to hear founders just selling their product, talking about features. You need to have a mission, you need to have momentum, and you need to have a story to tell and a story worth telling. So if you can meet those 3 criteria, then that's the perfect time to start launching your founder-led marketing.
So let's dig into each of those. So first one, product market fit. I guess that kind of goes without saying is you've got higher priorities in the business than growing your personal brand if you don't have product market fit. So I think you obviously need to have that before you do any kind of marketing is figure that out.
That's the foundation.
Yes, or any kind of personal brand marketing, I should say. So what was number 2, ICP?
ICP. So you need to find your niche. You can't say everything to everyone. You need to tailor your message to the pain points and goals of your buyer. So whether that's RevOps, whether that's accountants, you need to know who you're selling to and what they want to hear about.
Yeah. So that was massive for my personal brand journey of understanding who my ICP, my ideal customer profile was. So for us, it's either founders of early stage SaaS companies, B2B SaaS companies, or it's marketers of small scaling B2B SaaS businesses. And then creating a personal brand, figuring out what content do they care about, what keeps them up at night. And a really good exercise that I did, I talked about a few times on the show, is writing down 100 different problems that my ideal customer profile suffers from. What's 100 possible things that could keep them up at night? I did it on a whiteboard. It took like 2 hours. Quite daunting at the beginning, but once you're in the flow, it was really helpful. And then I like red circled like 15 of the ones that I felt were really bad ones, like really burning problems that were literally keeping them up at night. And then create content to help them solve each of those problems. And when you break it down like that, it certainly becomes like more bite-sized, easy to do, not so daunting, not so like blank canvas. So you think, right, this is what my audience care about. I'm going to teach them how to solve those problems. And it's not just teaching them how to solve those problems by, oh, work with my company because we help you do that. It's helping them solve it on their own, giving them tips, advice, deep dive insights. So that was like a game changer for me in terms of knowing what to create. So I think a lot of founders, they don't know where to start. Like they could just talk about so much. But when you boil it down to, well, this is what my audience will care about, not from a buying point of view, but from a wanting to learn, wanting to improve their business, wanting to not get sacked, wanting not their business to go under, those kinds of things.
100%. 100%. So also something we do at Rocket SaaS is we speak to customers. So even if you have 5 customers, find out the language they're talking in, like how they're describing their own pain points. That's been really useful. And also analyzing sales calls. So finding out what people are saying on sales calls. A lot of companies now record them. It's very easy to then put those transcripts through to AI and pull out really important quotes that you can then answer in your content, and also just make sure you're tailoring everything so it's resonating with those conversations you're having.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. So we use Fathom at Rocket SaaS as our note taker. So all of our sales calls are recorded in Fathom as long as the other person agrees to it. And then, we can take out the sensitive information, put it through either the Fathom AI or another one, and then say, okay, here's 100 recordings of sales calls. What are the common things that people are asking? What do they care about? And even like the kickoff meetings with the clients as well. And then it can just pull out all these highlights of, this is actually what you're getting asked about the most. This is people that are like deciding to work with you or not. This is probably the thing that they're not so sure about. And that just gives you lots of clues in terms of what content you should be creating. And what was number 3 on your list?
The third thing was having a story to tell. So talking about either your momentum, so your journey of building a product, your conversations you're having with customers, the challenges you're coming up against, or talking about your mission. So if you're a purpose-led SaaS company, talking about why it's important that what you're doing. And I think that builds a lot of trust, builds a lot of credibility, and people really buy into those stories rather than just pushing out features and company updates.
Are you familiar with the term build in public?
I am, yes.
So I've seen some really successful founders grow their personal brand with the whole build in public thing. So I've seen some founders say, I am starting a SaaS business next week and I am going to build in public. And build in public means like every day I've seen people do it, or maybe once a week, or a bi-weekly newsletter of they tell their story. So they say, this is where we're at with the development of the product. Here's the blockers that we've reached. Here's the challenges. Here's the wins. This is what I'm thinking about hiring. These are the challenges. This is a great book that I've read. This is a great person that I've been inspired by. And you just see the growth journey. So that's particularly inspiring for other people that are going through a similar journey, people that are within that industry. And I've seen a lot of that content on LinkedIn or email newsletters get a lot of traction, a lot of engagement, because it shows what you said, that like story and that honesty, and it's not a journey. A story is not always going to be full of wins and fairy tales. It's going to be the bad stuff as well, which people seem to resonate a lot more with, because I think it creates like honesty, and
100%.
Not so many people are talking about that as well.
I think like the advice would be to founders is just like, be brave. I think they're scared that putting vulnerabilities out there will make them look bad, or they're scared that their competitors will steal their ideas if they show it publicly. But if you're having that honesty, you're building a lot of trust in the industry, and also you're already a step ahead of your competitors. And I think sharing your playbook, sharing what you're doing, you're already 10 steps ahead. So I wouldn't worry too much about what your competitors or people might think of you. I think it pays off in dividends, being honest and being bold in the content you share.
Yeah, no, agreed. I've seen a lot of posts that have that story that like if something really bad happened to the company. I think even Stephen Bartlett has a really good one. Stephen Bartlett talks about how he was at an expo with like hundreds of people, and then he got a notification on his phone saying that they didn't have enough cash flow to give paid to do payroll, and he thought that the business was going to go under. He thought he was going to just obviously upset all of his staff, and then he tells a story about how he managed to swing it around by, I think he said he was going around the exhibition to finding all the investors and convincing them on the day to just give him like 30 grand to pay off his salaries or something like that, flying by the seat of his pants. But it was a really inspiring, like interesting story that got a lot of engagement, because it shows like the honesty and the truth and the reality of what happens in kind of scaling a business.
You remember it. So there you go. Obviously stuff.
I think I've butchered it, but it was something like that. All right, so let's talk specifically about how do you build a personal brand. So I presume this is a B2B SaaS podcast, so I presume LinkedIn is going to be the main channel.
Yeah. So LinkedIn's probably the most obvious channel for founders to get started, and it's free, and it's very easy to build organic reach with your ICP if you do it well. So it's all about posting with purpose. So if we start off with who, we've touched on this already, but finding your niche. So making sure you're speaking to a very clear, ideal customer profile. I don't think we need to go into that too much more than that. So then we have what to post. So why don't you start off by telling us a bit about what's worked well at Rocket SaaS?
So it's got to be tips, advice. So I mentioned earlier about understanding my ICP's problems and then just creating content to teach them how to solve those problems. So I would post basically SaaS marketing tips, and none of the tips were hire me. All of the tips were, you do this. Here's, if you've got a problem, let's say, for example, you want to get more leads from LinkedIn ads, this is how I would do it. And here's like the 5 steps I would do to get better results from LinkedIn ads, as a very broad example. Or another one might be, if you're thinking of doing webinars, here's the 10 steps on how you can create a successful webinar, from the topic to the technology to how you should market it. And I would create those tips in the form of just standard text posts, also videos like me speaking to camera. Just do it cheap with an iPhone at home. And then there'd also be carousels. Yeah, and those are the main ones. So yeah, text post, carousels, video. Those have been the 3 that I focused on. But it's not, I don't think it really matters so much about the format. It matters more about the content. And what that does is that like positions me as a thought leader. It makes people know me, like me, trust me, which is a common phrase in marketing. That's what you need. You need people to know you, like you, trust you, if they're going to work with you. You don't get people to know you, like you, trust you if you just constantly talk about yourself and promote yourself from a sales point of view. You want people to see you on LinkedIn as an expert. Okay, so this person is an expert on this particular topic on LinkedIn. That's my industry. That's where I'm trying to further my career or scale my business. So it makes sense. I'm going to follow that person because they're giving really helpful tips and advice, and they're not annoying, doing those annoying, just constant sales ads, pieces of content.
You do it very well. You get a lot of leads coming off the back of it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I've been doing that for like, what feels like probably like 2.5 years now. I've just been focusing on just sharing my advice and my guidance. And then, yeah, I think I've got about maybe 13,000 followers now on LinkedIn. And people have just been following me for a long time. And then that whole like demand generation thing kicks in. So we've taken on customers, let's say in the last like quarter, and I had to kind of look back at the attribution of, how did we sign this customer? What LinkedIn ad or what Google ad or what landing page did they find us? How did we get this lead? But actually, they've been following me on LinkedIn for like 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, and that's where it started. At the time, 3 years ago, they didn't have the budget to work with us, or maybe they didn't even work in the right space to need us. But that's like the power of LinkedIn. You can have short-term wins by like doing LinkedIn ads, which we're going to get onto in a minute, or just doing posts to just grab someone's attention, but also the compounding long-term benefit of you creating content is that you are just adding these followers. You don't know it at the time, but those are going to be potential customers down the line. So yeah, it's a bit like, so it basically pays off massively in the long run. It's a little bit like this podcast. Like we started this podcast about 8 months ago, I wish I started it 3 years ago, because this podcast would have so many more listeners and it would be such a bigger lead gen thing. So yeah, the best time to start posting on LinkedIn was 5 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Love that. Iconic. See if you sniff it already. And I think we're seeing a lot of founders, and especially SaaS founders, posting really interesting stuff at the moment. So they're posting a lot of frameworks, a lot of behind the scene content. And I think there's 2 pieces of content that I want to talk about today that I really, really like. So Chris Walker, Refine Labs, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him. What he does is he turns sales conversations into content. So he'll take a customer pain point or something he's heard in a sales call, and then he'll break it down and solve that problem on LinkedIn Live. So the tactic there is, after a sales call, just jot down a key quote or a pain point from that customer, and then share your thinking and share how you tackle it, because you've already done that hard work anyway, but just turn it into a post and repurpose that. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is publicly tearing down a problem. So Dave Gerhardt, ex-Drift CMO, does this really well. So the tactic is, you take a problem that's really common in your niche. So for example, why your onboarding process is butchering your conversion. And then you show softly like your product and how you would do it differently. So that's a good way that you can sort of generate revenue with your founder-led marketing, by showing how you solve a problem and not just like pitch slapping people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The first thing you said about, Chris Walker taking content from a sales call and creating his content around that, I definitely agree with that. But it's not just sales calls. You can have, if you're having an internal meeting with the team, if someone else on the team has just solved a problem or had a win, or if you're having just a conversation with a customer, or maybe your customer success person has just talked about something, whether it's good or bad, you can create content from that. I think a lot of founders, a lot of people that want to grow their personal brand on LinkedIn, they don't feel they've got enough content. So but me, I create posts on LinkedIn most weekdays. I do a weekly podcast, I do a weekly newsletter, and I've been doing it for about 2-3 years, most of it, and I still haven't run out of content. And it's because I'm basically doing that. So I'm kind of noting stuff that's happening in the business, whether it's sales calls with clients, internal meetings. I think that was interesting.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, I can definitely take that one little thing that Jess said in a meeting, and I can easily expand on that, and I can easily turn that into content, whether it be a podcast, a newsletter, or a LinkedIn post. I think we're going to get onto repurposing content later, which obviously makes things a lot easier as well. But yeah, I know people that have like a notes app on their phone. So whenever something interesting happens in the business, they just whip out their phone and just jot it down and then move on to the next thing. Because again, that is a big problem that people find with creating content on LinkedIn, is that they don't feel they've got enough ideas. But there are constant ideas flying through your head and your colleagues and your customers. You're just not noting them down and you're forgetting them. Whereas if you were constantly noting them down, you'd be like overwhelmed with the amount of content. So yeah, I think noting what's happening in the business, and also that makes it very relevant. It makes your content modern. It makes it kind of on point to what's happening. Like if I was still creating content today based on those 100 things I wrote on the whiteboard 3 years ago, there probably wouldn't have been any AI stuff in there. Yeah, that would have been very outdated. So yeah, you got to keep modern, and it makes it easier by just noting things. So I like that.
100%. So I think just the takeaways there is just ask yourself, what conversations are your customers already having? Just jot them down and then repurpose that as content.
Also, one of my favorite content creators, Pedro Cortez, the landing page guy. So he's a friend, he's a LinkedIn buddy of mine, and he creates really good content. So he creates teardowns. So his thing is he's a landing page expert. So he helps clients create landing pages that convert, get loads of leads. So he does the SaaS landing page teardown, where he takes a SaaS brand, looks at their landing page, jumps on a Loom video, and he tears it down. So he says, this is his kind of style, which we haven't really talked about yet, his style is quite aggressive. So he'll be like, this sucks. This is awful. I wouldn't do it like that. Some people have a bit more of a friendly kind of approach, but that's his style and that works for him. So he tears down his landing pages. I don't like this. I would change that. This was a bad idea. They shouldn't have done that. Oh, I love this carousel thing they've got here. The social proof is not good enough on this page. This is what I would do to make this page better. And that is positioning him as an expert. So people are seeing this content and going, okay, well, he knows what he's talking about. I have a budget to do landing pages. Who am I going to go with? So yeah, that type of content works really well. So you can think about it in that angle, like what is your business doing? And is there a way that you can create little Loom videos or walkthroughs, tear downs, advice of ideally real life stories? Maybe you'd have to remove the sensitive information from clients, but you could be like, we were working on this project, kind of like a case study or like a use case. This is the situation they were at the beginning. This is what we did to change it. These are now the results. And that's really effective content, I find.
No, 100%. And I think that leads nicely on to how often to post, because I think what we hear a lot from founders is they're very time sensitive and they're quite scared to commit the time needed to post on LinkedIn. And I think the thing to remember is that you're not trying to go viral overnight. You just need to post with purpose. So we generally recommend that you post 2 to 3 times a week and you test different formats, see what works. And generally it's best to post on weekdays. So Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, when people are online.
When I got started, I was posting 5 days a week, Monday through to Friday. It's now chilled out a bit to more like 3 or 4 times a week. But yeah, you have to be posting at least, I would say, 3 times a week on LinkedIn. And also you have to not get upset when your engagement is low for the first like month. It could be 3 months of very little engagement. But over time, as you are posting, and the important thing is engaging with the community as well. So it's something that I confess I'm not great at. I'm good at like putting posts out, but I need to engage more with my peers, because that is how you build engagement. So basically following other people in your industry, and when they post good stuff, is commenting on their post, not just hitting the like button, not just commenting and going, nice posts, or I agree. If you add something insightful, then that's how people then start to think, oh, well, that comment was really interesting. I'm going to follow that person. And also the person that you have commented on their post, if they've got a decent follower, you'll start to build like a LinkedIn friendship with them. So they'll start to follow them. You can slide into their DMs and just not to sound to them, just to build a friendship basically. And when you've got that, they naturally start commenting on your post, and that just helps the engagement basically. So you're basically trying to make friends.
Love that. LinkedIn friends.
LinkedIn friends. That's what you're trying to do. And that is how you will get seen and followed by other people, and that's how your engagement will grow. So it's important to say that in your content creation journey, don't just focus on the posts of yourself. You have to comment on other people's posts. Those are like the 2 biggies, I would say, to scale it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then lastly is the how. So how can you optimize your LinkedIn profile? And I think there's just some quick wins that you could take away here. So number 1 would be add a banner. A branded banner with a quick value prop that can go a long way and build that brand recognition whilst you're driving your own personal brand. Second would be adding a title. So next to your name, there's some text. If you say driving 50 million worth of sales revenue for sales leaders or something like that, to show credibility, show who you're targeting. Once again, that just helps build that trust and credibility when you're posting and commenting on other people's posts. And then
featured content.
That was my next one.
So you can do a post, and then I think there's like a little star icon or something like that. It's like pinning a post on your profile, basically. So when someone comes onto your profile, first thing they see is these pin posts. And ideally, well, it depends really, but a lot of people use video. Because what you want when someone comes onto your LinkedIn profile, you want them to like get your personality quickly. So if you are comfortable doing video, then I would say that a video should be one of the first posts that you've done. And whether it's you giving a tip, or I mean, I typically look at what's been your best performing posts. I wouldn't create a post and pin it immediately. I create a load of posts over a month or even a quarter, and then go back and say, oh, well, this post performed really well. So that would potentially make a good pin post. I think I think there's like a carousel. So there's not much a limit as to how many feature posts you can have. But I think before you flick through the carousel, you can only see like 3 of them.
Yeah.
So you probably want one of them to be salesy.
Case studies work well sometimes. So showing that as a bit of credibility, and then also lead magnets. So if you have anything like book a free strategy call with me or any lead magnets like that, that's a great place to pin it and hopefully drive some leads and revenue as well.
Yes, agreed. So like, signing up to a newsletter, downloading a guide, downloading a template, free strategy call, something that's a little bit more towards the bottom of the funnel. Because that was one of the mistakes that I think I made with my personal brand on LinkedIn, is I focused too much on the educational content, too much on the tips and the advice. And I think people were like following me and not knowing what I did as a job. So they just saw me as a really helpful,
nice guy,
kind young man who was just helping them with their SaaS marketing tips. And yeah, obviously they didn't know that I actually run an agency that could help them do it, because I didn't post about it enough. So I've heard people like Justin Welsh talk about like the 80-20 rule. Or I've heard him say sometimes you might want to start with like the 90-10 rule, meaning 90% of the posts that you make are not salesy. They're tips, they're helpful, they're educational, but 10% are salesy. So if you do 10 posts, 9 of them would be you're not selling yourself, you're just talking about the story, the tips, advice, whatever. And then 1 post out of 10 is, we do this service, would you like to book a free call? Or here's a lead magnet, or we're doing a webinar, or here's a case study about how we helped a brand do something that you're probably trying to do as well. And that's a good rule to follow to kind of get you in these like frameworks.
100%. It's really important to also showcase your product and post sales content. And a great way to do that is with ads. So the best way to put paid budget behind your founder's profile is thought leader ads. So they came out last year, and it's essentially where you boost a organic post to a paid audience. And there's a few benefits from doing this. So generally, you get a lot higher click-through rate. So a benchmark for LinkedIn is around 0.5%. We've seen from clients get up to 10% click-through rate. So absolute massive increase. And essentially, the reason behind this is it doesn't look like an ad. It looks like your thought leader posts, and it just blends into the feed, and people engage more with that. Like we said, people buy from people. So that's the first benefit. The second thing is, because you get high click-through rate, it's a lot more affordable. So we have a client who's targeting C-suite in the US. It's pretty much the most expensive audience you can go after. And with single image ads, you'd be looking between £15 to £20 cost per click. We've been getting under £3 cost per click consistently, despite the volume of clicks. So it makes it a lot more affordable, which means you're going to drive conversions a lot more cheaper. And you're also going to build that retargeting audience where you can then nurture the audience that are engaging with your content.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So I would always recommend that to clients that are on a very small budget, but they want to do LinkedIn ads. I think when people ask me like, oh, how much budget should I have for LinkedIn ads? I will usually say like, you've got at least £1,000 a month, ideally a couple of grand a month these days, because of just the high cost per click. So, but if you don't have that, if it is less than £1,000 a month, I would probably say don't do normal LinkedIn ads because it's just too expensive, but you can do LinkedIn thought leader ads. So, because as you've just said, because the cost is a lot lower, and it can build up your personal brand, which is just generally, as we're talking about as this whole episode today, building your personal brand is a much lower cost way of scaling your business. It takes more time. You know, you can scale a business fast if you've got loads of money and you can pump it into ads. But if you are tight with budget, then yeah, building a personal brand is a low cost way to do it. That's probably the number one reason why I scaled my business. So my business is bootstrapped, never had any investment. But one of the things that I did invest in my time was building a personal brand. And then sort of 5 years later, we do have money and now I can spend it on ads. But I'm really grateful that I put time into building up the personal brand. So, but when I was starting, LinkedIn Thought Leader ads never existed. I probably would have scaled my agency faster if LinkedIn Thought Leader ads existed 5 years ago, kind of when I started. But yeah, now they are really powerful to just doing everything that we're talking about today, basically accelerate everything that we're talking about today just to get more followers.
I think also if you're selling to more senior executives like founders, CFOs, etc., they're not going to respond to a product image of a SaaS platform, at least not that in isolation. So I think it is a lot more powerful way to build connections in a similar way to Rocket SaaS, who does target founders amongst other ICPs. It's speaking, on a level to people. So it's a good way to drive better results off the back of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And tell me about some success that you've been having with LinkedIn Thought Leader ads. I know you've been doing Thought Leader ads for quite a lot of our clients and you've had some really good success, but tell me about one of your most successful campaigns or your favorite one.
So we have one client that was really struggling to get LinkedIn to work for them. So we pivoted the strategy to focus solely on Thought Leader ads. And within 30 days, we saw some really great results. So they have 2K budget, which we used to boost about 8 to 10 posts and turned off the ones that weren't performing as well. And then within 30 days, we got 6 demo requests off the back of it with CEO ICP. So from a 2K budget, they gave us a ideal cost per acquisition of around $1,000. We actually over-delivered, which is really exciting. And I think also, which was just really gave the team a lot of confidence, is in their sales calls, they were hearing, we're seeing you all over LinkedIn, we're seeing you everywhere. So it was obviously also beyond the conversions we could track, was having a big influence on the pipeline and driving results. So I think with LinkedIn and building founder profiles, you kind of just know it's working because you do hear it in your sales calls. So as well as the results we tracked in the platform, we were also getting the feedback from the client that a lot of people were saying they're seeing them everywhere. So I think that was just a good testament to how we could get a lot more out of a small budget where other things like video ads and single image ads hadn't worked previously.
Yeah, I talk about demand generation all the time on this podcast. And that is a key thing that I've experienced with growing my business, is that when I jump on a call with a client or a prospect, I should say, they often open the call with like a big smile on their face going, oh, I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. And that kind of makes me blush. But it's a great position to get the prospect in, because what that means is that they've been following you for a long time. It means they know you, they like you, they trust you, like I've already mentioned. And that basically means that they're already sold. So when you get onto the sales call, it's not like you're just doing the standard pitch. It's like, oh, they already kind of made their mind up. You just got to kind of close the deal. And yeah, just boosting these posts on LinkedIn just to get you seen and known is a really amazingly powerful way to land clients. Obviously, it depends where you're at with your business. I know the example of the client that you're talking about, the founders, they also do the sales calls, and it's the same with me. So I do most of the sales calls here at Rocket SaaS, so that there is that like seamless link of people seeing my personal brand and they do a call with me. I'm not the person that does the delivery, that's your job, among other people, but it is a really smooth way of doing that. So I'd say it's also important for the salespeople. If you're not the person doing the sales, it's really going to help the salesperson to close more deals if the salesperson is recognized in the business. So yeah, getting them to increase that and boost their personal brand is also worth considering, I think, for the business. But you've got to understand, like, what's the priority for the business? If you've got an issue where people are jumping onto sales calls and you're not closing as many deals as you like, I think creating more content around the salesperson to make them known, liked and trusted, that could potentially help. And LinkedIn Thought Leader ads is definitely worth considering, I think. But let's talk about, how do we know when your LinkedIn personal brand is working? How do you know when the effort that you've been putting in is worthwhile?
I think this links back nicely to what you were just saying about demand gen. So you have to get a little bit comfortable with not having that direct attribution of last click equals demo requests. So I think moving away from vanity metrics like comments and likes, the first thing I'd look for are you engaging the right accounts? So when people interact with your posts, is it the right sort of seniority? Is it the right type of customer? And also, are you seeing meaningful comments and interactions like DMs, etc., where people are really resonating with what you're putting out there?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people struggle with, you're basically attracting the wrong audience. I think this comes back to the ICP thing that we talked at the beginning. I've seen a lot of people struggle. They put a lot of effort into growing their personal brand, creating loads of posts, and they're getting lots of engagement, they're getting lots of comments. But it's the most common issue I see is it's from people that can't afford to work with us.
Yeah.
So like I potentially had that issue in the past, creating loads of these tips and advice, and it's to people that are never going to have the kind of budget to work with rocket science. Well, not never, but they're certainly not in a position right now. So yeah, I think
quality over quantity, for sure. And I think some of those early indicators you can look out for to make sure you're reaching the right people is follower growth and actually looking at who those followers are. Also profile views, and also people that are saving your posts. So that's often overlooked, but it's a really great way to know if you're having high intent interactions with your audience. And lastly, DMs and connection requests. So that's really hard to track, especially from paid activities, but it's one of the biggest indicators that your message is hitting the right people.
Yeah. And I would also say this is like very hard to measure, but with my kind of philosophy of marketing, of doing demand gen, building your personal brand and creating this content, all the stuff we talked about today, is just one cog in the demand gen wheel, or machine, I should say. So ultimately what we're trying to do is get more sales calls happening, get more demo requests, more free trials. And ultimately you just need to be looking at that overall metric of, is it growing? And can you notice from all the attribution things that you mentioned earlier that it is the right cog in the machine? You can't just be doing that. You need to be doing other things like webinars and Google ads and having a good website, good messaging, positioning. But it's just one of those kind of many things to just help that demand gen engine happening. And you should start to see it specifically working for LinkedIn. I think for me, it's been DMs. So we've always got leads through the website, people filling out the form. But when my LinkedIn really started to kick into gear, you just see people DMing you. And that's the ultimate sign that things are working, that people DM you, and obviously they're an ICP fit. They want to work with you. They want to book a sales call. That's the ultimate thing. And then, the other is obviously follow account that I've noticed. That's a clear one.
And then I think like inbound signals. So the one I spoke about in terms of like salespeople feeding back. And then also something that Chris Walker talks about a lot is just having an open text field on your demo form. So where did you hear about us, and letting people type it in. And I think that's a really great way to track if it's working, because people will type in LinkedIn over time. You'll see that actually it might say they came from a Google ad or they came direct, but your brand was in their mind from LinkedIn.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, you need to ask people basically. Yeah. That's really important. So the field, and also whoever the salesperson is, one of the opening questions on the sales call after you've done a bit of rapport building should be, so how did you hear about us? And that should be jotted down so you kind of know what channels are working. And the most common answer that we get is LinkedIn. It's annoying that people usually say, I don't remember, LinkedIn somewhere. And I'm like, okay, was it my personal brand, or was it an ad that you saw? Was it one of my colleagues? And they usually don't know. They usually just go, I can't remember. I saw you somewhere on LinkedIn. So okay, well, that's good enough.
So in short, don't obsess over likes when it comes to measuring success. You'll know it's working. You'll see it's working from your sales conversations.
Sales conversation. Yeah, ultimately DMs, they need to be going up. That's what
you're all about the DMs, aren't you? Your LinkedIn friends.
Yes. Yeah, we are building LinkedIn friends, because it's not just sales, it's also like partnerships. You can build really strong partnerships on LinkedIn. Like this guy, Pedro, that I mentioned, we've become LinkedIn friends. We target the same audience with a different service, and then we've managed to refer work to each other. So there's all sorts of that stuff happening on LinkedIn as well. And that's a big sign for success as well. But let's get into like other channels. So it's not all just about LinkedIn. One thing that I will say, one piece of advice I got very early when I was starting my business was, don't spread yourself too thin. A lot of people think, okay, I need to be posting on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and Twitter, and Pinterest, and whatever else, because I need to spread, get as many people to see me as possible. And that's usually bad advice, is you want to pick one and go all in on that. Otherwise, you're just kind of creating kind of crap content across all of them. So usually most people is LinkedIn. But as you've kind of got into the flow with that, been a bit more comfortable with that, when you start to introduce like other channels, what would you generally recommend? What have you seen success with?
So we've seen a lot of success with podcasts, and it's also a great channel to fuel the content for your LinkedIn. So they work hand in hand, which is very nice. So I know we spoke about this before, Ryan. We have quite different approaches, but the way I've seen podcasts work for founders is using it as an account-based marketing play. So rather than focusing on building a podcast with a massive listenership, what you focus on is inviting the right accounts to be guests on your podcast and building that founder to prospect sales relationship and then closing sales off the back of it. So for instance, if I'm targeting CFOs and I'm a fintech firm, I might launch a podcast on path to CFO or something. I think I've actually taken that from someone else. And I'll invite CFOs onto the podcast and I'll ask them about their pain points and challenges. What I'm doing is I'm giving them a platform to boost their personal brand. I'm essentially qualifying them or finding out about their pain points and their goals and their successes. And then I've built that in-person relationship. So if you can do it in person, great. If you do it virtual, that's also okay. But it's all about how you manage the before and after. So having moments of delight after where you send them a gift in the mail to say, thank you so much for joining us. Introducing them to maybe saying after the podcast, like, oh, okay, well, what you said about X is really interesting. Ron from sales would love to reach out and talk to you about that. Is that okay? Most people will say yes, because they've had a lovely time. They get you as a person now, and they also, you've enhanced their profile with what you're going to promote. So that's worked really well. I would say I would only use that play if you have larger contract values because it's not very scalable. So if you're going for 4 to 5 to 6 figure deals, it works really well. Smaller than that, probably not the right play.
Yeah, more of a what you call it, enterprise level? Is that how you
it can work for medium size, probably not 4, I said 4, but 5 to 6 size figure deals. But yeah.
Yeah, agree. Okay, so it starts with that ABM play of, typically I've heard ABM, we talked about it on the podcast before. You pick, say, 100 companies that you think is going to be your ideal customer. So you can do that. You can talk like Sales Navigator or Apollo, various ways that you can just say, I'd love to have these companies as my client. And then rather than doing the classic thing of getting the salesperson to cold call them or cold email them or cold DM them and try and shoehorn a deal in there, you change the approach and you say, hey, I see you're an expert in this space. We're also operating in this space. We have a podcast or we have a webinar series where we love to teach our audience about how to solve these problems or how the industry is changing. How is AI impacting our industry? And we see that you're an expert. We see that you've been the CEO for this business for a few years, and we like some of the content that you post on LinkedIn, or I saw a YouTube video that you did. We think you'd be a great guest for the pod.
Yeah. And I think just on that, is a great way to sort of tie it in with the thought leader ads and the LinkedIn posts we've been talking about is in LinkedIn, you can track the companies that are engaging with your posts. So if they're not ready to raise their hand for a sales call, this is a great way to be like, okay, I've got X amount of paid engagements from company Y. Find the ideal decision maker and then reach out because they probably have some sort of awareness and you're building on the work you've already done.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, I've seen that play work really well. And essentially you're building a friendship with that person. If you're hosting a podcast with that person, you're hopefully going to have a good time. You're going to have a little chat before the podcast, maybe even a whole meeting before you do the pod, just to talk about the pod. Then as soon as the pod's finished, you're going to have a follow-up. Did you enjoy it? Hope you have a bit of a laugh about it. And you are just building this friendship. So if you then, after that, you've had like a couple of meetings, you've had this friendship, you've had loads of like DMs with each other. If you then say, we've got a great product that I think would probably solve that problem that you were talking about, would you like to have a chat with my salesperson? The likelihood of them saying yes goes through the roof compared to if you just reach out to them cold.
We've seen really good conversion rates. I think the thing to bear in mind is it's a slightly longer sales cycle because they're not necessarily ready to buy then, but we've seen people come into this like the funnel 6 to 12 months later because they really remember that interaction and they remember your product when they are then looking.
Yeah. So another really powerful thing about podcasts is the repurposing of content. So to let people know a little bit kind of behind the curtain. So me and Jess have been chatting on this podcast. The podcast is going to be like probably 40 minutes long. We're transcribing this podcast. So all of our words are being put into a transcript, and there's probably going to be about 5,000 to 6,000 words from this conversation that we're having right now. So what we're going to do after this podcast is obviously we're going to release it as a video on YouTube in long form. We're also going to take little snippets from this video and we're going to be posting them on LinkedIn, just like 30 to 90 seconds long. Probably going to boost some of them with LinkedIn thought leader ads. We're also going to pump those 6,000 words into ChatGPT, and we're going to say, hey, please can you repurpose Ryan and Jess's words and turn them into 4 different blog articles about what we've talked about today? Maybe not 4, we'll see how it goes. Also, can you then give me 5 LinkedIn posts about the topic that we talked about today? Can you also repurpose it into an email newsletter? And the whole time we're doing that, we're saying, here's examples of our previous newsletters, blogs, LinkedIn posts. Make sure you copy this style, copy this length. And so it basically just creates a ton of content from one quite natural conversation. Before AI, before note takers, to create that amount of content probably would have taken about 15 hours. But with AI, we do it in like half an hour. And that is how we are creating a ton of content for the brands. And once you pump some ad spend into that content to get it out there, suddenly our content is everywhere. Our top of the funnel is really wide, and it just creates this marketing engine that is steeped in thought leadership. Because a lot of people are doing that, but they're getting ChatGPT to do it from nothing. So it's just generic crap content. Whereas the content that we're going to create off the back of this pod is hopefully filled with thought leadership, because we're experts in the space, and we're creating like new, genuine content. It's not getting ChatGPT to just pull it from some other expert. So that's a little bit of like behind the curtain of how we can create a ton of content, and it's fun and it's natural, and it's get someone else to do all the AI stuff. Just get like a VA to do it, so it's not like me or Jess having to create all of that thing. We at first we did, and then we mastered the approach, then we trained someone else to do it, and hopefully we'll probably get an AI agent at some point to do it for nobody. But that is an added benefit of basically creating content to grow your personal brand, whether it's webinars, whether it's podcasts, whether it's you starting by doing written posts, is that you're basically creating more content. And that is one of the most powerful ways to grow a business, is to create content. There's not many businesses that have scaled rapidly without doing much content.
Work smarter, not harder. From 1 hour, you've got months worth of content. There's no brainer really. And then just a couple of other things I'd recommend for founder-led marketing. So one is, you just mentioned webinars. I think, especially in early stages, as a founder, put your hand up, go on the webinars, be that voice, because no one will tell the story or be as passionate about the story as you will. So I know there's a lot of like SaaS companies that need to scale and they need to like branch out into sales, etc., being that front man. But I think in those early stages, the founder will tell the story best. So try and go on webinars, go on podcasts as much as possible. And also, host breakfast mornings. Just put yourself in front of your ideal customers as much as possible. And the second one is be in micro communities. So go on Reddit, go on Quora, go on the help forums for whatever product you're integrating with. And as a founder, share your knowledge, answer your community's questions. Try and do that for at least 3 niche communities, and that can really pay off. So yeah, I think as a founder, putting yourself in these different channels can be really, really useful as well. And there's loads of Slack communities and stuff out there now.
Yeah, love it. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot on how to grow a personal brand on LinkedIn and the importance of it. But thank you so much for coming onto the show. And if people wanted to learn more about you, where would they find you?
They'll find me on LinkedIn, of course.
Of course.
Jessica Chilman. So yeah, please do connect.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it won't be the last time. So hopefully we'll see you back soon. And have a wonderful rest of the week. And thank you for having a conversation with me. I don't feel hungover anymore. It's gone.
Hey, I love that. Thank you for having me.
There's a win. All right, but thank you so much. And see you soon.